Welcome to episode 229 of the Work Shoot Wrestling Podcast. This is Corey Richmond, joined as always by Jason Brooks. Jason, yesterday we had a very special episode talking about the Speaking Out movement with Noel Harwell Lagrasso. Jay, it was a very different episode for us. How you doing today? And any thoughts about yesterday's episodes? Having a night to, think about it.
Yeah, no, it was really intense. We spoke to someone, a manager, a wrestler, a female performer in the business. And it was really, really, tough listen at certain points. People reaching out to her, wrestlers apologizing for things they did to her years ago. So really just a incredible firsthand perspective from her. And these accusations are not stopping. Like, they are not stopping. And I think they're going to keep happening. Ring of Honor today, they're going to say they're investigating. And, I noted this on Twitter, at Work Shoot Pod. We talked about doing background checks. You talked about it last week. Why are they just finding all this information out now? So just a lot going on with the Speaking Out movement. And it's a good thing that we're having it. It really is. I think it's shining a light on wrestling and some of the real deep, dark secrets and issues behind it. And it's definitely a good thing.
Over the last, 2 or 3 months that we've been back, we've spoken about things like, the great documentary series by Vice, Dark Side of the Ring. And we thought, foolishly, that some of these things were like maybe kind of behind us. But you see that history has a thing of repeating itself. And a lot of these issues are just going to continue to happen. And as awful as it's to say, it's almost a good thing that this is coming out in the open, that hopefully maybe finally wrestling's awful past might finally be able to change by people now being brave enough, by others saying something, that we might be finally be able to have a change, and something good might be able to come out of all the hurt and hard times that in the past that, have happened.
Yeah, I agree. Similar to the Black Lives Matter movement, right? Where history is repeating itself, as it always does, unfortunately. Policy needs to change. People inside the industry need to change. Promoters need to change. How women are treated, that needs to change inside from a cultural standpoint. Same thing with the Black Lives Matter movement. If you want to get rid of systematic racism, it's got to be, the politicians. There has to be change. People have to vote. So hopefully things, and speaking about the women in wrestling, Speaking Out movement in particular, hopefully things will change. I think there's some easy fixes, and we talked about that with Noel yesterday. And there's going to be harder fixes. So hopefully things do start to change in wrestling. And I mean, Corey, right now we got the pandemic. If you're ever going to, do a clean slate with these things, this is the time to plan this out now while the business is, obviously, kind of on a slow roll here, especially with the indies.
Right. I mean, we've never really spoken about them, but Shakara is shutting down their doors today. Mike Quackenbush, who was the head of that company, had resigned, and also they decided that it was time for that. It was a company that was a huge place for a lot of independent workers to get their start. I mean, it's a rolling down effect of we're going to see a lot of change, and hopefully it's really good. I mean, one of the things that I think we've spoken about, and maybe it was in our original incarnation of the show, was like TNA Wrestling. They had at one point where they had Chrissy Hemme, who was, I don't even know if she was really anything more than a figurehead, where she was, like the head of the Knockouts division. Basically, what WWE has, like one, if at all, like one female writer on the whole entire thing. I mean, yeah, you need better conditions for women feeling safe, but you need more of a female presence where I think women could actually go and actually feel comfortable saying if something's happening, where if they're just talking to a man and they're like going in one ear and out the other. Same thing with, like we've spoken in the past where, WWE having, like one African-American or black writer, who was promoting the idea of Kofi winning the title and everything, but you have to have the representation, not just so that you have more stories with them, but, feeling comfortability. If something happens, you feel like you could talk to somebody. And so change can be brought in, but also you feel comfortable talking to somebody when something actually comes out where you don't start saying, all right, it's just a good old boy system where I'm going to say something, but nothing's actually going to happen.
I agree 100%. You have to make people who, you have to make the minority, women, African Americans, Hispanics, in particular in our country, you have to make them feel in the wrestling industry, let's say, keeping it to wrestling, you have to make them feel better about coming out about racism, about sexual abuse, about things like that. You have to make people feel comfortable. And the way you do that is by having more people in leadership positions who are doing that. That's really how you do it. That's one of the big ways to do it. We'll see with the WWE and their lip service. Noel, we were talking about Stephanie McMahon, right? She's a big time person in the WWE. And I think the WWE, changing, I don't know. But, I think Triple H is doing some good things with with NXT. We see the 4 Horsewomen are really big. But then on the other hand, you see Matt Riddle on our TV after the allegations, right? So it's really, really, really tough. And then, these other organizations. Corey, what the hell is Ring of Honor going to do? Marty Scurll is the head booker or involved in the booking, whatever he is. He's essentially the champion. I mean, Rush is the champion, but he's essentially the top draw that Ring of Honor has. If he leaves, you could shut the company down if he leaves. So what do you do? Ring of Honor is going to investigate it, but are they going to investigate it? Are they going to get an independent investigator? Because if they're investigating it through their own eyes, they're going to try to do everything they can to prove Marty is innocent of these accusations, right? So how does that go? With Sammy Guevara, how long is he going to be suspended for? Now, his thing was different. It was like just a comment. It was a horrible comment, but it was a comment. So, very, very interesting to see exactly, what's going to happen. I was watching wrestling today, so I didn't watch the shows live. And I was just thinking, all I was thinking about was everything else that's going on. The COVID, speaking out movement. Like, I was barely thinking about that these matches were good. And I think if you're a fan who really is, kind of a mark like what we are, who really knows the inside of the business or thinks they knows the inside of the business, I almost feel like this stuff is, and it's the reason why people aren't watching in droves. There's so much stuff going on. There's so many issues out there. And, morally, it can be hard to watch wrestling with everything that we see going on.
Agreed. I said this over the last couple of weeks with everything that was going on. Like, one of the reasons why I liked, the Stadium Stampede was because it wasn't super serious and it was different and it put a smile on my face. I liked something randomly today. I think it was the lady who does the interviews for MLW.
Alicia.
She put up this goofy, I think it was like a TikTok video or something where she was just doing the different outfits with of all the different like stables, Bullet Club and DX and different stuff, and it put a smile on my face. So but
the thing about the smile on my face thing,
I know
but the thing on my smile on my face thing, I get it, but that's exactly WWE's reasoning for still continuing to do shows during a pandemic and not test. You know what I mean? Like, so I get what you're saying, and that's that's your thing. But unfortunately, some companies are still using this as an excuse to still try to make money when morally, and we're going to get into this with the coronavirus, they should not be, right? So it's to
interrupt you 1 second, and this is a whole entire different type of subject, and both of us are huge sports fans, but let's be honest, the only reason why, baseball, football, basketball, NBA, all of these sports coming back is 2 reasons. One, the main reason is, is money. But the other one is a distraction for us not to think about COVID and all the other awful things that are going in. All right, so, put our smile on our face and distract us from all the awful things that are going on outside the real world. That's what wrestling is supposed to be. It's a distraction from real life.
And it hasn't, but Corey, it hasn't been.
Agreed.
Right. Now we have these people who are testing, people who are testing positive. We knew people were going to test positive. They just weren't testing them. Like Trump, well, now more people are getting it because we're testing them. Just ridiculousness.
Okay,
right. So, there's those elements too. And obviously sports are opening up because it's all about the money. It's all about the TV contracts, obviously. So yeah, no, I definitely get what you're saying there. But I think the idea that wrestling now is not becoming a distraction. It's it's part of the problem, right? It's not a distraction. It's the problem. Now, granted, you and me may not have been able to do a show for a couple of months with no wrestling on, but you know what? That would have been what it would have been. I don't know. You kind of were a big proponent of not having shows during the pandemic, and I get that. And I mean, it really sounds like this is going to last a lot longer than a lot of us realize. So I don't know when they would have actually done a show, but maybe they should have taken time to make sure that this is going to be done safely, because the WWE they clearly are not. That's clearly not happening now. 24 people or whatever we're hearing has it, and one person got it twice.
Yeah, maybe let's get to that. So last night we found out that, well, I guess yesterday afternoon we found out, I guess around like 4:00, that there was from Tony Khan said that Jon Moxley was not going to be on the show because someone that he knew was had tested positive, and also QT Marshall, a friend of his, had tested positive. At the time, we did not know who officially Jon Moxley was talking about, but later on that night, we found out that it was Renee Young. The two of them are married. They live together. Now, of course, the least important thing of this is, of course, that if there's any sense in this world, Jon Moxley is going to be pulled from Firefest, whatever their pay-per-view is, TV special next week.
Firefest.
Yeah.
Well, what do you do? So she has the virus. She is sick with the virus.
Mm-hmm.
She's quarantining herself. From what I read, they have a big house because
Right.
they have a lot of money. So they live in the same house, but they're not living. I don't think they're like sleeping in the same bedroom, and they're trying to stay away from each other, but they live in the same house.
I mean, I don't know what you do. I mean, realistically, I think you have to postpone the match, and they're a very open company. I mean, even on commentary, they said, Jon Moxley's not here because of the coronavirus, a lot more than WWE ever says about the issue. I mean,
yeah, according to WWE, there is no coronavirus. They just have random NXT developmental talent under glass for no reason.
Yeah, because we all decided to come to a hockey fight. And as a result, today we found out that Adam Pearce has told everybody that he has gotten the virus, and Kayla Braxton apparently for the second time has the virus, which news to me. I did not realize someone can get the virus twice. That's even scarier, outside of the wrestling industry, the idea that someone can get it twice, which is, horrifying. But, we don't even, based on, HIPAA laws, you don't have to tell people if you have it, which is, a whole other issue with safety concerns. But, I understand, and listening to a former guest of the Workshoot Wrestling podcast, Brian Alvarez, on his show today was saying that there's a very good chance the reason why AEW and WWE aren't going to go and shut down at this rate is, especially with AEW, from sources hearing, AEW doesn't do shows, they could be canceled. I mean, it sounds ridiculous. You get a 4-year contract extension. If you don't do shows, it may not have to be live shows, but if you don't have to do shows, they could be canceled. And in a pandemic, you're going to put a lot of people out of work. So, on that respect, you understand why, they're still doing shows. And maybe it's the same deal with USA Network and Fox. He wasn't sure what he hadn't heard anything on that end, but you're between a rock and a hard place a little bit, I
mean, they're absolutely between a rock and a hard place if what Brian Alvarez is saying is correct. This is not, I was not into the, having to cancel shows. I thought you take time, you test people, you do it right. I think AEW's done as good of a job with this as you could do. They're limiting people. They're having people take tests. I mean, and I also think that's why you don't see that many people with it, because, people understand I'm going to be tested. I have to be careful. If the person running it, and again, it goes back to the same thing as the Speaking Out movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, all these things. If the person at the top is laissez-faire with it, doesn't want to wear masks, doesn't want the audience to wear masks, that's going to have a trickle-down effect on his employees. And Tony Khan is serious as hell about this from what it sounds like, with people getting tested and, having to put something on their wrist, saying that they were tested and not having people on shows. They seem like they're taking it seriously. And I think that's a trickle-down effect to the wrestlers, who are also, I think, taking it maybe more serious than they would have. So I think that's another reason why AEW's cases have not exploded. But we knew something like this was going to happen with either company. The world champion getting it or what. I mean, you knew this was going to happen. I mean, this was bound to happen. But Corey, 24 people with the coronavirus. I mean, that is
scary.
That is insane. And listen, we all talk about it. The very easy thing to spread. There's people out there who says the numbers are being made up and this, and not that many people are dying from it, and blah, 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 and we don't know this and we don't know that. Here's what we do know. It is very easy to spread. Like, it's very easy to spread the thing if you're not wearing a mask. Even if you're wearing a mask, it's difficult. So we knew this was going to happen at some point, and here we go. Here we go, and let's see how these companies handle it. But I don't know how you have Moxley on Fyter Fest. I don't know how he's on this card. She has the virus now. I think it's 2 weeks after she's done with the virus. Then he can run. I mean, I don't even know if time-wise he can wrestle. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but that's what I thought it was like a kind of a 2-week window, because we don't know when she got it, when she, whatever. So.
Right. I mean, and the scary part is, and we had this conversation, I don't know if we had this conversation on air or off, but when it came to where, when the UFC was first starting to do shows, the idea of you can not have the virus, like on Wednesday when they first tested you, and then all of a sudden they retest you on Friday, like the day before the fight, and you could have it. Like, they tested her on, I guess it was like on Wednesday when the initial, or was it Friday when they initially had the person test positive? She came back as a negative test. And then all of a sudden she was feeling super sick. She got herself tested personally on Monday. And then all of a sudden when she got back her test results on Tuesday, she had it. So the idea that you don't have it on on Friday, you could have it 2 days later. So like, as of right now, when Moxley was tested with her, he didn't have it. So he could be tested, 2 days from now, he could have it, So
I mean, he probably has it. He lives with her. It's his wife. I mean, he probably has it. He could be asymptomatic, whatever. And we haven't even gotten into the fact that these shows are taping in Florida, which had like 5,000 cases yesterday, like triple the highest number of cases. Starting today or tomorrow, they're not letting people into New York from Florida and a number of other states, right? So Corey, here's the other thing about that. Traveling in between these states might become difficult for these guys. It might be harder to say, oh, well, you're coming from, New York. Let's say, Luke Harper lives in New York, okay? He lives in Rochester. I don't know if he flies back and forth every time. Let's say he flies to Florida, then goes back into New York, and they're like, hey, buddy, you got to quarantine for 14. We can't have you here. Then what does he do? I think Trent Beretta lives in Rochester, New York. What do these guys do then? So I think this really could get extremely complicated very, very quickly, and I think it's already starting to.
I mean, when all the AEW guys came back initially, right before Double or Nothing, you had pretty much everyone there for basically 3 weeks. You had JR, and the majority of the people, they stayed in Florida for 3 weeks to do all the tapings before going back to their each location. So, I mean, I think that's what, these companies are going to have to do again. They're going to have these people stay where they are, do a bunch of tapings, and then go and move up, then let these people go home. I mean, I don't know. The way it sounds right now, it sounds like you're about to set up a game of beer pong with Beretta and, Luke Harper when you go to Rochester next week. I don't know if that's something that I should be sending out the invitation for,
Yeah.
your boys at AEW or not. But
yeah, no, maybe I'll have to look them up. But Corb, I mean, I don't know what you because this is different now. So you go to Florida, you do a show, you come back to New York, and they're like, oh, you can't, you have to quarantine for 14. They might not let them back out of New York. Like, I don't know exactly. And upstate New York might be different than New York City. You know, there might be different rules. But you're talking about, you know, Jersey, Connecticut. They're all kind of undergoing that. I don't know. This begins to get really, really complicated really quickly for these companies. And here's the thing. They'll be able to run shows. But I think, and they've talked about this with the NFL, the issue with the NFL is going to be Kansas City's playing the Denver Broncos on Sunday Night Football. And Pat Mahomes is out. A couple of their receivers, Tyreek Hill's out. And a couple of their linemen are out. How are they going to play a game? How are they going to play a game with half their team out with the coronavirus? There's a case in the NWSL, women's soccer in the U.S. There's a team called the Orlando Pride. A bunch of the women, you know, they went out to the bar, 10 of their players. The whole team got coronavirus. They couldn't play. The whole team got coronavirus. So it's like these things are just going to keep coming up. And you know, I don't know what these companies are going to do to stop it, what they can do.
And I'm sure you can watch some of that women's soccer action on CBS on Saturday. Cheap plug. But, you know, it's going to be one of those cases where we're going to have to they're going to be playing this by ear. I mean, I think the excuse that they could honestly use is they're essential workers because, you know, they've got that. They're considered essential workers in Florida. That's how they're doing this, right? So, I mean, if you're an essential worker, you can travel back and forth. I mean, I'm considered an essential worker at my job, so I can go and basically wherever I need to go. So I mean,
but just because you can go anywhere, it doesn't mean the state they have to let you in.
Yeah. But
they might say you can't. You have to still quarantine yourself. I mean, you know, maybe you're right, and they can have some.
I might be wrong here, but I mean, when I'm done with this, I mean, I don't even know if I should say this or not, but you know, whatever. Right when we're done with this show, I have a meeting at work where I think we're gonna have to get, you know, tests done in the next like day or so in order to, you know, make sure we can still come to work. You know, I mean, basically COVID tests because a bunch of people are gonna be coming back to our job starting the next like week or so. You know, so I mean, I think we're gonna have to take like I took it the antibody test, you know, a couple of weeks back. I think we actually have to take the nose swab test. I think sometime this weekend. So I mean, I understood exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I will say quickly is that I believe it was PW Insider reported earlier today that WWE is going to do starting this week that everyone's got to come in 2 days early. So I guess it would be this Wednesday, I guess. Starting when it comes to tapings, they have to be in there a day or two early to get testing done to make sure that they're okay to be there for shows, which is the smartest idea to make sure they're cleared.
So it's gonna be actual COVID testing, not the gimmick. Just take the temperature.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, it only took them 3 months to figure that out.
Exactly.
Better late than never, I guess.
Better late than. Yeah.
And I think the thing that we have to be aware of, you know, the idea that, you know, they have to play it by ear. The wrestlers that we're used to seeing, we may not see. There might be people out, you know, the whole card subject to change at the bottom of these pay-per-view shows. The card subject to change is going to be a big one. I think there's going to be a lot of cards subject to change. So, you know, we'll see how things go, but I'll be honest, with everything going on, it's, you know, and Wednesday is the best night of wrestling of the week, obviously. And, you know, even I was watching the shows today just thinking about Kayla Braxton. And we haven't talked about her. Can people stop being shits? You know, so Kayla Braxton, for you guys, you know, she's announced her WWE. She got coronavirus for the second time. We talked about it a little bit today. And she put on Twitter, I should say, that she was being dumb. She got tested. She was, you know, positive. So she's young, and I guess she started kind of living her life and with no mask, and was really dumb about it, and then got tested positive again from it. And she admitted her mistake, and she said, people, please take care of yourselves. Don't be an idiot like me. And people just blasted her. Now, and she's off Twitter now. Now, I don't know what was said. I don't have that information. But, it's like, why do we have to be so bad to each other?
You gotta grow up as a society.
Why do we have to be so bad to each other? And it's not about grown up, because grown-ups do stupid stuff. It's about just being being good to your fellow man. And, we've seen it with Hana Kimura, who passed away, suicide based off, it sounds like, cyberbullying. We've heard so many cases of that. I've seen cases in my own school of that, obviously, and at work with kids. And, it's terrible. It's terrible. The woman's got coronavirus. She did something stupid. She deserves to get ridiculed a lot for possibly exposing other people and not wearing masks. That is a criticism. A criticism is something that's different than bullying, right? You can say, Kayla Braxton, don't do that. Like, wear your mask, be responsible. That's different than being nasty to someone online. So hopefully she's doing better. Hopefully she learns from this, and hopefully she's okay mentally, maybe more than anything, due to some of the treatment she got online.
Now, one thing before we move on to some other things, unless we're going to stay on this topic a little bit more, I was thinking about this just now. We've had people like Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Roman Reigns have all decided that it's not safe for them to be there. You've got someone like Seth Rollins, who's one of the biggest guys in the company right now. I've said in the past, all kidding aside, I don't love the Monday Night Messiah gimmick. But he's got a recently pregnant wife. How do you continue to come to work? Unless you're going to be self-quarantining every moment of the day and not seeing your wife. I mean, you have the same thing with like a Daniel Bryant and all these people who have kids. And yeah, you're lucky enough mostly not to have tested positive, but you have rampant, spread of this thing right now. How do you continue to come to work when you have somebody who's, recently pregnant?
Well, we also have no idea I guess that's the thing, right? We don't know what we don't know.
It's just dangerous.
But we don't know if you get it. You said something to me yesterday. I'm not going to repeat it. That was like very ignorant, right? And then I corrected you, and you're like, "Oh, that's what you mean. That's what you meant by that." Yeah, and I'm not going to get into it for the show purposes, right? And so I think there's a lot of misinformation. I think there's a lot of like ignorance out there about what this is and what this isn't. And maybe Rollins is like, "Hey, this is my job. This is what I do. I want to keep doing it." I can't rip anyone for saying this is their job and they want to keep doing it. I say, if you're out in public, wear a mask. Don't be an asshole. That's my thing. If you're out in public, wear a mask. If you're inside somewhere, wear a mask. If you're within 6 feet of someone, wear a mask. But if if Seth Rollins wants to work and he feels like he's safe at his job, I can't, because Corey, you and I talked about this yesterday. They're saying there's going to be a second wave. There's no sight of a cure or a vaccine. We still got the president talking about these crazy drugs.
There might be something by the end of the year, but who knows?
Yeah. Well, he's not a scientist. So right, and he's saying this to cover his own ass. So we don't know anything. We don't know anything. I think one of these other countries are gonna find a vaccine before we are, and then we're gonna have to spend a ton of money getting a vaccine for the millions of people in our country. But so you could say, okay, Seth Rollins, don't work while your wife's pregnant. Okay, fine. But 6 months from now, this is gonna be gone. He's not gonna work for 6 months. I don't know if that makes sense for him to not work for 6 months if this thing is still around, or a year. We don't know when this is going to be cured or when there's going to be a vaccine. We have no idea. And so I can't rip someone like Rollins for wanting to work. Everybody's making their own individual choices. I hope the WWE isn't going to give these people blowback for not being on shows. I think the idea that they're doing testing every week is definitely helpful, finally. And that is something you can feel comfortable about because you at least know the people that you're going against have been tested. But then the tests aren't 100% either. So that's another thing altogether. So there's just so many things. I don't believe in absolutes for the most part. I believe there's a lot of gray. Now, there's things that have come out that make me sometimes lean a little bit more kind of one way or another. But I think life's a lot of gray. And in this case, it's a lot of freaking gray, man. There are very little absolutes with this virus. So if he wants to go wrestle and he feels like he's safe, go out there and do it.
There you go. And I know that it often seems like we're killing WWE and giving a pass to AEW a lot of times when we talk about this stuff, but I'm going to kill AEW on this, where that final segment, and if we have time, we'll get into actually a little bit of wrestling this week. But AEW, that final segment, which I thought was solid with Orange Cassidy and Jericho, but they're going into the stands, and yes, you saw, I think, like one person with a mask, but you've got a bunch of extras sitting in the audience in the last. Jay, I don't know if you noticed this, but you got all these people in there who some were sitting slightly far apart from each other, but there was a good gap where a bunch of them were next to each other. Why are these people not wearing masks?
But if they've all been tested, then they should wear masks. But if they've all been tested, that's a different. That's the point of this, right? Is we don't know who has it and who doesn't. That's why we're asking everyone to wear masks. But if they've been tested and they don't have it, then theoretically they wouldn't need to wear a mask because they don't have it.
Let's at least show a little bit of the idea of, let's be a little smart here,
Yeah, but if they're testing everybody, which they've been doing for weeks, and here's the thing, they've been testing people for weeks. So they really know the cycle of people getting it, people not getting it. They should wear masks. I get it, but I understand that, Corey. But they tested people, so what are we doing here? I disagree with you here.
Okay.
Yes, they should wear masks, but I'm not going to rip them because they're actually testing the people. So, I again, there's very little I can rip them on. I think they've done with the coronavirus anyway. I think they've done a really, really good job. As good of a job as they could possibly do within the circumstances of having a show.
So I guess before we move on to other things, in the upcoming weeks, do you see do you think we're gonna see a lot of changes within the product due to COVID, or do you think that McMahon is gonna just be as ignorant or stubborn as he's always been, and we're gonna see basically the same exact thing? Do you think we see any changes? Do things evolve at all, or do you think the idea is it's going to be exactly as it's been this whole entire time, and getting the plexiglass up as far as he's going to go with giving any wiggle room?
Well, they said they're going to start testing, so we'll see if that's a gimmick or whether they're going to. And Corey, they need to. Florida is out of control right now. And the MLS is going to start soon, Major League Soccer. The NBA, they're freaking out about it. Like, players are not going to play. So people are freaking out about it. So they need to make sure they're testing people on a regular basis. And this isn't some gimmick to make people feel better right now and they go back to not testing. So they need to test. That's the point. Do I think they will continue to? Yeah, I think cooler heads will. I think someone's going to say, Vince, this is out of control. This is out of control. So I think they will start testing on a regular basis. But we'll see. Because AEW test on, I think they test on Wednesday. Or do they, maybe the people get there Tuesday and they test everybody Tuesday and then they have the show Wednesday. And I know obviously the crew for WWE is much bigger. It may have 3 shows. So I know that their issues are definitely a bit more complicated. But, there's definitely a way to do it. If they get set up storylines, they get set up TV, they get set all these things up. There's got to be a way they can set up everybody getting tested every week.
Yeah, so unless you've got more on this, do you want to actually talk a little bit of wrestling this week? Or
yeah, let's go.
All right. Well, usually I would say our safe haven of the week is usually, the Wednesday Night Wars. Couple coming in during one, I guess the good things about doing the show earlier in the day is we actually got the ratings for the Wednesday Night Wars as we came on the air. For the first time in quite a while, NXT actually won the night. 788,000 to 633,000.
That's a real. Now we talk about patterns, and you love going over the ratings every week. That's a big jump. 150,000 people when they were basically neck and neck, and AEW really went down. That's now again, that could just be a 1 week thing. It could be because of the North American title match, which I think probably was the case. And AEW didn't promote this as being. I know they had John Moxley who ended up not being on the show, but I don't think this was a big, event planned. But yeah, no, it was. It's very interesting that they won in such a decisive manner.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what the momentum is going to be going into the next 2 weeks. We have the return of the Great American Bash, the at one time a very big WCW event and a terrible WWE event. It's been the next 2 weeks. We've got Great American Bash versus AEW's 2 big weeks. Do you think the momentum can be kept here with NXT, or is it just going to be week by week where whichever?
I mean, I'll ask you the same question. I go by patterns. What have we seen every week for the most part, other than this week?
AEW winning. AEW.
But what else do we see? We see that they're always close.
Yeah.
Every week they're pretty much close. They're pretty much neck and neck. So I see no reason why to think that it'll be any different. I see no reason to think why, unless Roman Reigns appears in NXT next week. There's no reason for me to see why it would change. AEW is gonna have a big show. NXT is supposed to have a big show. So yeah, I see no reason why it would. Now, next week's show, what is the big match for NXT next week?
I think it's the women's 4-way number 1 contenders match.
Okay. I mean, that'll be a great match, but I mean, I think going up against Jericho and Orange Cassidy, I think might be.
Orange Cassidy is week 2. It's going to be the tag team title. I think the tag team title match will be the main draw, and Cody versus everyone's favorite, guy in a polo shirt, Jake Hager.
Yeah, so I think AEW should win that pretty, going away. So yeah, I suspect it'll be close as it has been. I think NXT. This was their biggest guys in one match. This was all their stars in a match. This would be like Jericho, Moxley, and Cody in a triple threat match for the title, right? It'd be a big match. So they should have won this week. If they didn't win this week, maybe you'd be worried, honestly. So makes sense they won this week. I thought the show was okay, and we'll see what happens moving forward.
Yeah, I just think that I'm actually a little bit surprised that it was that big of a gap. I thought both shows were solid.
What was advertised in AEW? I started watching the show. I'm like, I don't know what they're previewing, because I know Moxley was going to be in action, but I didn't know what he was going to do, and then he wasn't there. I didn't remember. I was going to watch the main event. I was like, what's the main event today? And they had, the goofy press conferences and the face-to-faces, and that stuff's all fine, but you're going to watch that, or you're going to watch a match with the 3 top guys in NXT, 3 of the top 5 guys in NXT for a title in the main event. It's not even close.
Well, I guess that's what I was going to say. Does this say that, Orange Cassidy, not that Orange Cassidy's not a draw, but
Corey, come on. Don't give me the stuff with a draw. He's going, then Chris Jericho's not a draw. Well, what are we talking about here? Don't give me this draw stuff.
No,
it's a face-to-face confrontation where 2 guys are talking to each other. That's never going to beat an actual match unless it's The Rock, unless it's a megastar. There's never gonna beat a match with 3 top guys in it. No, don't give me this draw stuff. Get out of here.
I'm saying other weeks when you had Jericho, I'm not, and listen to me out before you tell me I'm crazy. And I'm agreeing with I'm not even saying my point is right, but when you had Jericho with other top guys, Jericho and Cody, Jericho and Moxley, their talking segments went and won those main event segments against matches, but Jericho and Orange Cassidy didn't deliver when it came to just a talking segment in the main event against a match. And it's gone up against NXT big matches.
This was almost as big of a match as you could have.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying
you can't have a much bigger match. You can't have a much bigger match than they had. Also the main event segment was a little later, so the NXT match had already started. So then you're thinking, well, I'm already watching this match. I want to see who wins, right? So then there's no reason to go, oh, Jericho's talking to Orange Cassidy. That'll be fun, but I want to see the end of this match. So to me, I don't think there's any conclusions you can draw except that NXT had a big main event.
What was your thoughts on the idea that you basically had a combined minute of women's action on AEW this week, where basically and I guess you could say over the last 2 weeks, you basically had a good amount of pub for the women's division on NXT, which they've always done, but on AEW, if you want to say it's maybe because of injuries to Statlander and other people, but you basically Kushida basically, had a 10-second squash match, which made her look dominant. And then you had, the aftermatch with a little bit of with Penelope Ford. That was basically all you had. And the week before, you basically had, nothing. They're doing nothing with the women's division except for, some segments with Britt Baker. And then you have NXT, which is, their women's division is huge.
I mean, Corey, you said it. If Kaden Carter and Casey Catanzaro were in AEW, they'd be 2 of the top women. Instead, they're jobbers. That's how good the NXT women's division is. They have to establish these women because they have so many good ones. They even given Aaliyah's been there for 8 years and she's finally getting a little run. You know what I mean? Also, a lot of these women are hurt. You said Statlander was hurt. Britt Baker's hurt. I'm not sure what's up with Nyla Rose. Maybe they're trying to figure her out. So
she'll be on week 2.
She'll be on week 2. So there's things that they're figuring out. I rip them all the time for the women's division. I think they're doing okay. I think they're doing okay. I didn't see Big Swole this week, but again, they did the bodyguard thing and she was protected and so on and so forth. So I didn't think it was a big deal. I really didn't. I actually thought last week AEW did a good job with the Big Swole segment. I mean, you're establishing characters, and they need to do that in the women's division. So I don't think it's a big deal, but we know. But again, NXT's women's division is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So I mean,
second best women's division in all of wrestling.
Yeah. Well, other than Stardom. I mean,
I was gonna say Impact, but yeah.
I'd say NXT. I'd say NXT is better. I'd say Tessa Blanchard, and I mean, obviously she's great, but I would say NXT's woman by woman is better.
We'll agree to disagree, but they're both pretty damn good.
Really, not the Knockouts division is better.
If we ever get
Jordan Grace was the champion. I mean, she's fine.
Jordan Grace is really good.
She's okay.
She's
gotten better. She's fine. She's not Candice LeRae. She's not Io Shirai. She's not. Yeah.
Like I said, they're both really good.
I think Impact has the number one, the 1 seed. And then I think NXT would have like the 2, 3, 4 seeds, 5 seeds, and then maybe you start getting into Impact.
Valkyrie is pretty good too, but we're getting to the we're getting out there.
We're getting deep in the weeds, but go ahead.
Deep in the weeds. But so, like I said, I think it's something to look at, see how AEW reacts with the women's division after Fyre Fest, what they do, if they build contenders going forward. But one of the things I'd like to get into quickly is FTR versus SCU. And I know it was the thing that was built and we knew it was coming because we've got to have the dissension between, making them tag team, making them have to work together, and then that's how we get to the next step. But first of all, what do you think of SCU versus FTR and the idea that we have to see, the Young Bucks and FTR tag team, and that's how we're going to deal to the split, to them actually facing each other? I don't know. Didn't exactly.
I mean, I think they're figuring it out, and some of this is probably coronavirus related, and so I think it's fine. And I'm a huge fan of Pentagon and Phoenix. So however you can get them on a show, like I'm good with it. And here's the thing, Corey, they have a lot of tag teams. So they need to, you can only have so many, and they've had a lot of tag matches lately. They almost have too many tag teams, if that's possible. I mean, they have probably the deepest tag team division in the history of of wrestling. I mean, I other than the NWA in the late '80s with the other than the NWA in the late '80s with all those tag Doom, Midnight Express, whatever.
Niners, yeah.
I don't know that there's been a better tag team division. So it's funny they put all their stuff into the tag teams, and the women's division they forgot about it. Deonna Purrazzo, we don't need you, and then she's like a top star. But anyway, yeah, so they had to get them on the show somehow. And, I don't love it, but it'll be fun. And, I think it'd be different if this were a pay-per-view setting. Like if you were paying for this, I think it might be different. It does kind of feel like a filler match / just a match to keep the storyline going. I thought the one thing that was interesting, and I don't know how you felt about this, with FTR's promo, where they talked about the different tag teams, and they said, the tag team champions, and then the top of the ladder, the Young Bucks, right? So they actually said the tag champs were here, and the Young Bucks were higher than them. Right. The champs should be of the highest regard. And so I don't know. That didn't sit great with me, but not a big deal. That's kind of a nitpicky thing. But I think the champions should always be held to the highest standard. They always should be the standard bearer. They always should be, they're the top, and it proved that with Omega and Paige. They beat them. They beat the Bucks. So they're the best. That's who you have to go out and beat, right? So anyway, it's a nitpicky thing, but that's how I felt about that.
Yeah, like I said, I slightly disagree with you, but NXT has the best women, in your opinion, the best women's division out there. AEW has the best tag team division. WWE has the most money. But I think we spoke about a lot of good things, but I'd love to have gotten your opinion on, the Edge promo from Monday night, and not a lot else from that show. But Jay,
we got a lot of the big show. Not a surprise at all.
Actually, you know what? One thing before we do get out of here, because we do have a time crunch, we spoke about it right before we basically went off the air last week, and we found out, about the whole time Matt Riddle situation. Smackdown, they made the decision to go and stick with Matt Riddle being on the show. He was on, basically the first 35 minutes of the show. We didn't really get a chance to speak about it on Wednesday. What was your thoughts on them sticking with the idea of keeping with it and going forward? What do you think they do with Matt Riddle here?
So you mentioned this yesterday with our interview with Noel, how Matt Riddle supposedly told the WWE about this, about him being stalked and so on and so forth. And we also talked with Noel about the idea that people could be taking advantage of this, of the speaking out movement, and using what these women have really gone through to take advantage. I'm not saying that's what's happening here, but if Riddle, and you talked about this before, how Riddle, it's his job to go to the company. And I said, well, he did, go to a lawyer or whatever. And you were right. But if he did it the right steps, and he said this woman is crazy, whatever, they're in a tough spot. You know, they were put in a really, really tough spot. They had taped the show already. I would have tried to do something different. And I don't think he's going to be on the show this week. But again, very, very interesting. If he said, hey, I am telling you, this woman is crazy and stalking me and all this other stuff, and I have lawyer information. You know, it's real tricky. It was probably trickier than we thought it was at the time because we didn't have that information that he had already told the WWE. Like Gallagher was fired immediately, but again, one guy's on 205 Live, one guy's a top guy, the guy on SmackDown. So I don't know. I think moving forward is going to be interesting to see where they go with it. I think you got to keep him off TV. I think you have to investigate this. If he's cleared, then you could do whatever. You could decide what you want to do. If he's not, obviously that presents a whole nother set of things you got to deal with. So I don't know. I think they have to investigate it and keep him off TV moving forward, though.
And you know what? I totally agree with you. I think that they were in a tough spot. We didn't know all the information. I would have aired with caution myself. This week, they've already, after the show had aired, they said that they were going with Drew Gulak versus AJ Styles this week for the title. I could very easily see them doing something off camera, saying that King Corbin went and did something to him, in a backstage segment, leading off of the whole tight interaction they had on SmackDown / him being eliminated at the Royal Rumble, which I think was most likely a feud they might have gone with off the bat. I mean, it looked like he was going to get a huge push. I think you got to air with caution. I mean, I don't know how much we're going to see, the Velveteen Dream, going forward, because it looked like, their stop and start with him. We thought they were maybe going to do something with him with the former
Sam Shaw.
Sam Shaw. Thank you. I couldn't think of his new name. Dexter Loomis. So I think all of these situations are very tricky, until you have all the information. And as they always say, you never know if some of these things are true or not. You got to err on caution because you know what? For every one that is true, there is always a chance that one may not be. So all these companies are very tough spots, but you got to err on caution for right now. And I think you got to take these people off TV. Yeah. But Jay, I think we covered a lot of great ground, and we'll continue to look into these subjects. Jay, let people know how they can follow the show on all our social medias.
We are at Worked Shoot Pod on Twitter. Corey and I are both very active on there. So at Worked Shoot Pod on Twitter. Worked Shoot Wrestling Podcast. We're on iTunes. We're on Stitcher. We're on Spotify. We're on other random places to get podcasts that I don't even know about. Check us out on Facebook, Worked Shoot Wrestling Podcast. We do have a Facebook page. We put our podcasts out. We put articles out. So I actually Googled Worked Shoot Wrestling Podcast, and a lot of shit came up that we do. So if you Google Worked Shoot Wrestling Podcast, you will find us. But definitely at Worked Shoot Pod on Twitter, and subscribe, leave a review. We'll read it on the air. Give us 5 stars. Thanks.
And you can find all of that very easily now. Linktree/WorkShootPod. All of our information is there. And of course, be sure to check out our sister podcast, part of the FamDune Network, You Don't Know Jackie, which this past week we did an episode with the very own Jason Brooks talking about the hit HBO show Insecure.
I made it, everyone. I made it on.
Where, as always, I am made fun of, and for good reason, because I am the court jester of all court jesters. It's an easy target. But, Jason, as always, the last word is yours.
I think we're done here. See ya.